Okay, if everyone could take their seats, please. We're about to begin. Thank you. Hello, and a very warm welcome to the parish of St Mary for the 2026 election Hustings. It's great to see you. Thank you so much to you all for giving up your evening this evening and be with us here in the room. I'm Hannah Shelswell, and I'm going to be taking us through the proceedings this evening until 9 o'clock. Just to make you aware that we are live streaming the event this evening, so thank you to everyone who is joining us online. It's great to see you too. And just to let you know that you can access closed captions this evening if you need to by pressing the button at the bottom of your screen. A recording will also be uploaded to the vote.je website after this event. Now, I am sure that you are aware, but you can only vote for 3 of the candidates who've put themselves forward, and they have drawn lots as to where they're sitting tonight. So from left to right, your candidates are David Benn, Independent; Arlene Maltman, Independent; Russell Labby, Independent; Helen Evans, Reform Jersey; Lucy Stevenson, Independent; and Chris Rebendane, Independent. We're going to start this evening with a short 3-minute speech from each of the candidates, and then we're going to open the floor for questions. We will take as many as we can until 9 o'clock. Just to make you aware as well that we will prioritise questions from parishioners, so people who live in St Peter, St Juan and St Mary first, and then if there is time we will take questions from everyone else. If you are a candidate or an elected member currently in the States Assembly, then we will not be taking questions from you this evening. We want to make sure that we prioritise parishioners and members of the other parishes. When you do ask your question, we just ask that you tell us your name and also where you live before you begin your question. But I'll remind you of all of that when we get going. So, yes. Okay, St Mary's is a priority, and then we'll take from the other parishes. Okay, thank you for confirming that. Okay, let's not waste any more time. We will get going. So, David, over to you. David Benn.
Good evening, good evening. I'm standing with the same enthusiasm and energy as I had 4 years ago. Brought up in St Juan, I now live in St Peter, and part of my farm was in St Mary, so I have a very strong bond with this constituency. I was chairman of the Farmers Union Potato Committee and chaired many subcommittees, and was a director of the Jersey Producers and Merchants Organisation, and I strongly represented the industry. I've served both in St Juan and St John Honorary Police, and I'm a trustee of the charity Mustard Seed. I'm a board member of the Société Gérieuse and also of the Jersey National Park, much of which is in these 3 parishes. We need to do better for the future generations. Government spending is too high and the workforce is too big. Only by long-term planning and clear decision-making can we reverse this trend and prevent future generations being left with debt. While backing the finance sector, we must see our tourism industry enhanced, as it had so many add-on benefits, as well as continued strong support for our farming sector. Essentially, we must reinvigorate our economy by actively seeking out new opportunities for business with our near and far neighbours. AI is impacting and will replace jobs in finance and other sectors. By enhancing Highlands, people can retrain, and our young can learn new skills and apprenticeships, fulfilling new opportunities created by entrepreneurs who can be aided by reducing red tape and faster planning decisions. By doing this, we can retain more of our young people in Ireland. We must reduce the cost of living by increasing the tax threshold, reducing fuel duty, harbour dues and freight costs, increasing childcare provision, encouraging local food production, and ensuring that income support is appropriate. Looking to the future, we must ensure our energy and food security, as this is almost non-existent. We must increase housing stock for our young families using new techniques that reduce heating and electricity costs significantly and help them to buy their new homes. Our environment is a major asset. It is essential to preserve all agricultural land for its intended purpose and prioritise reducing PFAS levels in our water. We have great frontline services we must increase in some areas. For example, mental health and autoimmune care. With the increasing age of our population, we must encourage both physical and mental health to prevent a serious imbalance which is looming in the very near future. Through supporting sports, physical recreation, community and culture, we can increase well-being, promoting good health as we age, thereby reducing the cost of care while increasing the quality of life. We must continue and perhaps increase our support for the charities that enhance the care of those in need, as well as treating in-family carers with far greater respect. We live in an incredible island with a wonderfully diverse, multi-talented population. Let's work together collaboratively for a bright, healthy and prosperous future. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlene Maltman.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming. I'm standing because I'm passionate about the northwestern parishes where I grew up, and I cannot imagine living anywhere else. Most people know me for my competitive surfing achievements, but my career has been in marketing and communications. I currently sit on the GB Olympic Surfing Board, which supports grassroots surfing here in the island through to elite competition. I might be a new candidate, but I'm not new to government. I worked 6 years in the Cabinet Office as a press officer, and that gave me broad insight into how government works, its strengths, and where some of the challenges are. My political campaign focuses on a number of issues, including the cost of living crisis. The new government must implement immediate measures to improve life for islanders. My ideas range from cutting GST on food to increasing support for childcare costs. The new Assembly will be voting on the next island plan. This will determine where affordable homes can be built in the parishes. And having worked in the government when the last Bridging Island Plan was produced, I understand this will be one of the biggest political decisions for the rural parishes, and it is a key issue for many of the young people I have spoken to. I believe new homes must be architecturally sympathetic to the landscape and must create inclusive communities. I want to see more interconnected cycle and walking paths, and a frequent hopper bus service connecting all 3 parishes to local amenities and the Enid Kenno Centre. Now, government is spending more than it's earning. So if we don't want to raise taxes, we have to rein in government spending and raise revenue by growing a diverse economy with opportunities to young people so that they want to stay on island. I support the implementation of the Financial Competitiveness Review and policy initiatives in digital, rural and tourism sectors. And working with small businesses, I also know how startup costs and red tape can be stifling. We need to cut this if we are to grow a strong future economy. And we need to simplify our planning system so that local businesses and entrepreneurs can flourish, and make it easier for homeowners to make small property changes. I believe we need to protect what is special in Jersey, but adapt, modernize, and look to the future.
Thank you. Russell Labby.
Ladies and gentlemen, cutting government spending, cutting government waste, growing our economy, doing something about the cost of living crisis. These are all the major issues that the Assembly have to tackle in the next 4 years. And I'm sure we'll touch on those tonight. But I wanted to start with St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter. 3 parishes thrown together in a new constituency, but 3 parishes which have a lot in common. I mean, we shop in the same shops, don't we? We drive in the same lanes. We drive up to the same roadside stalls. We swim and surf in the same bay. We enjoy the finest, unspoiled countryside in the island. And today, in 2026, that green zone is under threat. 9,000 solar panels in the Grande Rue St Mary. The Coastal National Park is forever beleaguered, facing inappropriate development applications from Latak to La Pullant. Not to mention the PFAS problem, against which the brave residents of Montalabroon have fought the government so hard and brought to our attention the problem with this forever chemical for all of us. These are the live issues that your deputies must tackle in the next 4 years. I'm used to fighting inappropriate development. I've done it for a number of years. I've won some inside and outside the Assembly, and I'm up for the fight. What worries me is the states are likely to face the challenge of the next island plan. And listening to some of the senatorial candidates, I'm worried that it'll be torn up and replaced with something with far fewer protections for our countryside. We might have a fight on our hands about that because it could be bad news for our unspoiled countryside, and I'm well up for that fight. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't build new homes for our young people and for those wanting to right size. Of course, each parish has to play their part, and we can do that in appropriate places. So if asked, what would you do for St Mary? My answer is protect it. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Evans.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out this evening. Sorry, is that better with a microphone? Good evening, and thank you for coming out this evening. It's wonderful to see so many people here, and I think it has to be said that St Mary's may be the smallest parish in terms of population, but it certainly won't have had anything like the lowest attendance at a Hustings, and in proportion to the population of the parish, I would hazard a guess it's going to be far and away the best attended of Hustings, or certainly up there in the most attended of Hustings. My name is Helen Evans. I'm standing again as a candidate for Deputy of St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter to represent you, the people of this part of the island where I grew up and where I now live in St Peter's village. I believe that I have the skills and background to be an effective states member, acting in the public interest and representing the constituents of this part of the island. So firstly, a little bit about myself. I was born and brought up in Jersey. I moved away from the island to go to university when I was 18. I stayed away after I completed my studies. I taught mathematics in secondary schools in Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire for several years. And then I made a career change. I trained as an accountant at the United Kingdom National Audit Office, often known as the public sector watchdog in the UK. That gave me exposure to central government accounting in the UK, right across the full range from a sample of large departments to small arm's length bodies, an understanding of managing public money in the UK context, and experience which enabled me to qualify as an accountant, which I then took with me and worked with a top 10 accountancy firm in London on international grant audit, travelling internationally, doing mainly grant-funded audits and other consultancy work of projects funded by mainly the European Union and the United Nations, and occasionally other funders. So I have good solid experience both on the front line as a teacher in public services and experience of contracting and procurement and all host of issues around the management of public money in the public sector. I am standing with Reform Jersey because I believe that with ministerial government, the system of independence that served us well in the committee days doesn't work so well. It leads to fragmentation and quite often delayed decision making and turns. With Reform Jersey, I will prioritise addressing the cost of living, preparing Jersey for the challenges of the future, and restoring accountability to government. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy Stevenson.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Lucy, and for the past 4 years I've had the privilege of being one of the deputies for St Mary's, St Ouen and St Peter. I live in St Ouen with my husband and our 3 children, And prior to entering politics, I spent 13 years as a journalist at the JEP and political correspondent and assistant editor. And I was inspired to stand for election the first time because I wanted to see more compassion in politics. And I wanted to see our government making meaningful connections with islanders. Now, this last political term has not been without its challenges. We've had 2 governments, and there has been a great deal of disruption and delay as a result of that change in leadership. But it has allowed me to learn very quickly, first as an assistant minister in government, and then as a backbencher and a busy member of scrutiny. These experiences mean that if I am re-elected, I'm ready to hit the ground running, and it's a very good job because there's an awful lot to do. So my vision is for a community which works together to build a healthier, happier, more resilient population, making Jersey an even more attractive place to live, work, bring up children, invest, and do business. We need to find sustainable solutions to some long-term challenges which for too long have been left in the too difficult pile. And we need to carefully balance the increasing need for fiscal prudence with our responsibilities to deliver for islanders and to protect our environment for future generations. And I believe strongly that government should be working as an enabler, creating and nurturing the environments for businesses, charities, and individuals to thrive. Now, it's the role of a deputy to represent the interests of constituents in the State's Assembly and to work with them on individual and local issues. In relation to St Mary, I've brought 2 successful amendments to improve proposals to purchase the former Seaside Cafe at Greve de Lec. I've represented the interests of parishioners in debates on solar on agricultural fields, asked questions in the States on water quality at Greve, on mains drains and water supplies, among other things. And I've engaged with the likes of the Parish Youth Club, the Community Centre, sports clubs, businesses, and attended many events in the parish. And of course, I've worked with many parishioners on individual casework on a range of subjects. This past term has been the first under this new system, with our 3 parishes all represented together. It's been a learning curve for us all. And if I am privileged to be re-elected next month, I will of course take on board the feedback from parishioners who have ideas for how that can be improved. And I will commit to working together with you, your connoisseur, and the other deputies to ensure St Mary and the 2 other parishes are well represented. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Rebendane.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Rebendane, and I want to represent you in the State's Assembly. Why? Because I have the skills to deal with the challenges facing the island, which I feel have gone unaddressed for too long. Skills honed over 40 years in the finance industry, often on the international stage, and latterly as a senior member of the island's Economic Crime Unit, investigating international financial wrongdoing. Why now? The situation is serious, and the window for effecting change is closing rapidly. I could have waited until retirement to make my bid, but I don't think the island has the luxury of waiting another 4 years in order to get back to economic reality. So I decided to take the leap of faith. I resigned from probably the best job I've ever had, because that's what you have to do for public office, and to enter the fray. That is a measure of my commitment. Why here? I lived in St Mary for a good part of my adult life. Our family have had a home here since 1982, and St Mary remains my children's home base. Wherever I've been in the world, St Mary has been my anchor. I have the credentials to be your voice. I say I want to achieve 10% more for 10% less. This may not seem a dramatic change, but essentially, those relatively small adjustments will have a real impact on government finances. Currently, our revenue streams generate more than £1.8 million annually. When the tap is fully open, the bath should be filling, but someone's forgot to put the plug in. Our spending is out of control, and we're not achieving value for what we do spend. I want a State's Assembly that knows how to count. I want a healthy Jersey, not just healthy population, but healthy finances, economy, land, and water. I'm not just about the money, but without stable finances, we cannot afford the necessities our islanders need. We cannot build the hospital with a clear conscience. Living on an island brings challenges of scarce resources, especially land. Imported goods and materials cost more, competition is limited, and we have to provide all the services normally funded by a larger community. In exchange for low taxes, we accepted that reality for a long time, and this model worked. But it's changed. It's shifted, and more islanders are finding it hard to make ends meet. For the most part, we cannot control the prices of essential things. So when politicians tell you they're going to reduce costs, ask them how they plan to change the price of a brick. The best thing we can do is leave more of your salary or pension in your pocket after tax. That, however, requires a culture change in government. Government should do less, but be good at what it does deliver. It needs to regulate for efficiency and well-being and not to control. Create less red tape, eliminate waste, and collaborate seamlessly across departments. That's how we get Jersey back on track. Please vote for me on the 7th of June. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much to all the candidates. So it's now time to take questions. What we're going to do is pass the microphone round. Annie has volunteered this evening. She's at the back. She's going to pass the microphone around, and we're going to take 2 questions at a time. To make things easier, I'll take 2 from this side of the room, then 2, and then we will flip-flop. We do ask that questions are brief, please. We ask that you don't make long statements and get to your question as quickly as you possibly can. If you don't, I may have to ask you to shorten your question. Questions cannot be offensive in any way. If they are, you may be asked to stop talking or potentially to leave the room. A reminder that we are going to take questions from parishioners first, so that's parishioners of St Mary's first this evening. If there's then time, we'll open up the floor to take further questions, and we're not taking questions from candidates or elected members. The questions that you ask need to be able to be answered by all of the candidates. So please don't ask a question that is just aimed at one of them. They all need to be able to answer that question. And please tell us your name and where you're from before you ask your question, and hold the mic nice and close. So we will get going. We're going to take 2 questions at a time, as I said. So we will start on this side of the room. So if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. We have 1. Do we have any more at the back where Annie is? We have, yeah, 1 close. Okay, thank you. We'll take that one first. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Elena Moran. I live in St Mary's, just by the church. And I've got a cost of living question, I guess. So I think everyone in this room, we all have one thing in common, which is we all buy electricity from the Jersey Electricity Company, which, as I think we all know, is a monopoly provider. As we move away from fossil fuel, we're all going to be relying even more on electricity. Other monopoly utilities on the island, for example, Jersey Water, are controlled by government under a service level agreement. Jersey Electricity is unique because it's actually not 100% owned by the government, which means the government has no control and no service level agreement with the company. The company currently uplifts the unit price by 100%. So they buy the electricity from France for between 9 and 12 pence a unit, and they're selling it to us on the domestic tariff for about just over 22 pence a unit plus the daily standing charge. So the government has no control over how much we pay for electricity. Last year, the board of the company paid themselves over £1 million.
Apologies for interrupting, but can I just ask what your question is?
So my question is, when people are struggling to pay their bills, should the government have more control over this company? And if so, how should it be achieved?
Thank you very much. The lady in the orange at the front would like to ask a question next. Thank you very much. If you could tell us your name first of all.
I'm Sarah Johnson, and I live in St Mary's. And the thing I want to point out was, which I don't think any of you realise, the sort of people coming into the island, setting up shop, just buying a licence for £1,000, and they can put 100 tables here, buy things, go to people's houses. I'm on the committee for the elderly, and when I had these ladies saying they were going to allow these people in their house, they don't pay taxes, they don't pay rates, and they're gone tomorrow. And the floodgates will be open, and they'll be able to come in for 40 days.
Can I ask what your question is? Is
My
it regarding
question
immigration?
is to all of you, should you revoke this licence of these sort of people that come into the island? They're even willing to do your family affairs
Thank you.
in their brochure.
Thank you. I'm just going to set the timer. What we've agreed is that we're going to have 2 minutes to answer, and everyone has, the candidates have asked that I ding the bell once when it's 30 seconds to go and twice when it's time. Okay, we're going to start with Arlene Maltman.
Thank you for your question. I think what I'm hearing there is a question around the structure of ownership of our utility companies. I don't have that information as such, but what I can say is that I appreciate the cost that electricity has on islanders at the moment. I know that we do import cheap renewable electricity from France, and we should make sure that that is a sustainable avenue for us to continue to use. On the second question, I think it was about people coming into the island and on a licensing system. I do believe that our employment is governed by our housing law at the moment, and I think we could do with a review and set a population policy, reviewing the factors around licensing to make sure that it's modern and again fit for the future. We need workers on the island. We need to welcome those people with the skills that we need, and we need to look after them. So it's about growing our economy again. You know, we need skills and resources, but we also need to make sure that our young people are being taught in schools so that they have those skills and education to bring to the future of the island.
Well, would you prefer if I stood up or sat down? Does it? Up, thank you. Well, Elena, you paint a very worrying picture of the JEC, and clearly that needs to be looked at. I'm worried about the standing charges for everybody and whether they are fair. And I have to say, and I think that needs serious looking at, especially for older people. I have to say the JEC is not in my good books because of the solar panel issue. I mean, covering the island's countryside in solar panels, I think is outrageous. I don't know how it's got past the ones that are already there, but I know that Monty Tadier's proposition makes the presumption against that kind of development. That got through, I think, in the last sitting of the States. And I certainly would have supported that too. We have to be really, really careful. I just don't understand. I appreciate the desire, the net zero desire, but I don't think spoiling our environment to save the planet, you know, the size we are, I don't think that's right. But clearly, we're going to talk probably tonight an awful lot about regulation and cutting red tape, something which I think has been a subject in every election, and every election Hustings I've attended since the early 1970s, when I said to my father, who used to take me along to them as a child, where's all the red tape? I'd like to see it. I'd like to see them cut it. You know, I thought it was a physical, I was a tiny kid. So we've really got to get tough on regulation, but it does seem to me with the JEC that perhaps they are lacking some. Now, I think, Sarah, your issue is with visiting tradespeople coming into the island and cleaning up and not necessarily being totally kosher. And if that is the case and it is happening, that clearly has got to be looked into and stopped.
I will take the second question first, if that's... Thank you. Sorry. I'll take the second question first, if I may. I think this is a very real problem, because while there may be many people coming over under this 40-day rule doing perfectly good quality work and using the scheme in the way it's intended, it clearly does present a problem for anyone acting in bad faith and the potential for scamming some very vulnerable people by doing shoddy work, overcharging for it, and then effectively there is no possibility of taking enforcement action against these people because the local authorities don't even necessarily know who they are or where they've gone to. So I think that may be an area where we would need to look at a little more in terms of identification checks and registration checks and ensuring there is some redress in the case of those who do not do things properly and who scam people, essentially. From relatively small businesses to a rather large one, Jersey Electricity, if I'm not mistaken, the question asked was, should it be brought within the ambit of the states? And if so, how? It may not be the answer you're hoping for, but I think the only realistic answer to that is, given, if I'm not mistaken, it's a company listed on the London Stock Exchange, I cannot see any straightforward way of doing that. So I think that is probably not the answer to the various sources of dissatisfaction with Jersey Electricity that have been quite widely aired. I think a better route for addressing those sources of dissatisfaction might be in terms of regulating the monopoly market in which it works. In contrast to the arm's length body utility companies, where I think more oversight from central government would be warranted and may yet come out of the review of arm's length bodies, it is in a rather different position.
Thank you. And I will follow on from Helen's answer on the first question there about the electricity company by saying that it's absolutely fundamental that government has good working relationships with utility companies particularly, and we've seen some very stark examples of that in the last couple of years, and moves that government have taken action to strengthen those relationships where it's been necessary, with gas, for example. There are some areas where I think government should be working much harder to put pressure on Jersey Electricity. Pricing is not something I claim to be an expert in, but it is a very complicated area, so I don't think that I can go into that with a lot of evidence behind it, and I'm someone who likes to give my views and makes decisions on evidence. But I do think we need to see more pressure being put on to improve the extension of services and how they're upgraded across the island, because that is a challenge, particularly in our parishes up here. And as others have said, the solar panels on properties, and I think we're starting to see a movement there, and there have been some decisions taken in the States recently which should also start to improve that situation. Moving on to Sarah's question, as others said, under the Control of Housing and Work law, there are quite tight guidelines about what is and isn't permitted, and I would urge anybody who comes across any of these individuals acting in an inappropriate manner to report it, because it will absolutely be followed up on. I wouldn't be in favour of closing that licence altogether, because it is used for very legitimate reasons where it's needed. An example was when scaffolders were urgently needed after some of the storms we experienced. Thank you very much.
Well, Elena, I believe you're the expert on the subject of electricity, so we're all brave to comment on it, to be honest. It takes us into the area of what they call arm's length organisations, and that is a topic in itself. It is one of my pet subjects. I have asked why states members aren't sitting on the boards of lots of them, and I was told it's a conflict of interest. Well, I think it's a conflict of interest for our states assembly members not to sit on the boards of these essential departments. The standing charge, yes, I agree with Russell. I think that needs to be looked at. My thing is more to do with air source heat pumps, to be honest. I had someone come around trying to persuade me to put one of those in. And when I said, what's the price of electricity? He said this price. And I said, when's it going to get reviewed? He said, next year. I said, where's it going to go? He said, I haven't a clue, but I know we pay less than the French do for it at the moment. So we'll have people locking into air source heat pumps when they don't know what the price will be of electricity in the next 12 months. In terms of licenses, Lucy's right. I remember with Storm Kieran, we had amazing problems with all the trees down and the scaffolding needed, and it actually was essential that workers came in with that scaffolding at short notice. And I know the government took a rather flexible approach to that 40-day rule. But in general terms, I do thoroughly agree with you. I would have thought if it's anything to do with investment management or legal work, that would be covered by a trade body, Law Society, the JFSC. All of those people should be alerted to any problems along those lines. So hopefully there is redress for anything like that. But shout, I would say, if anyone sees any bad practice. Thank you.
The JEC is quite an interesting case, isn't it? Because it is a monopoly. My own opinion is rather unimaginative monopoly as well, because they buy the fuel, the electricity, as we know, at 9p, and then they sell it at rather a large sum. And there's nothing else coming from them other than demands for solar panels, which we'll be talking about, I'm sure, later on. But other than that, there's no other imagination coming from them in terms of our energy security and our electricity security. We are, as an island, enormously behind the curve when it comes to green energy. Absolutely enormously behind. All other countries are far ahead of us, and this is very regrettable. And it's a shame when you're a monopoly and you're sitting on something that's quite easy to make money out of, you ought to be a lot more imaginative. So, you know, I think they do need sorting out, really, and some kind of investment into them to see what we can do to make them far more approachable and reduce the standing charge where necessary. Regarding the traders that come in, yes, we've all seen how they have done some excellent work, but there are some rogue traders out there, and I'm quite amused sometimes to see how many vans are coming into the island with English registrations, and you know they're popping up, they're doing work, and they're disappearing again. And of course, where is the guarantee? Where's the guarantee for the work you've had done or for what you've bought? And I think people ought to be reporting anything that's suspicious to the Home Affairs Committee so that it can be dealt with urgently. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Right, we'll come to the other side of the room. Does anyone on this side like to ask a question? The gentleman waving the notepad, and then we'll also take the gentleman just in front of him. I'll come to you later. Thank you.
Auburn Ashbrook from Lovett Rube. All of you, one person obliquely, made comments about public expenditure and how it exceeds income. This problem is easier solved than, well, easier spoken about than solved. So, can you give me practical examples of what you realistically think can be achieved in order to save public expenditure? And please do not talk about the quality of civil servants. That is not the question. It's about the quantity of public expenditure.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Neil Deakin, and I live in St Mary, just across the other side of the field. Please would you confirm whether, in principle, you would be in favour of a hate crime law being introduced in Jersey? And if you are, please would you kindly explain how you think about the protection of free speech?
Thank you for your questions. We'll start with Russell Labby. Thank you.
Okay. I do think it is going to be possible to cut government waste. So let me think of a couple of areas. Okay, small one. Why am I being sent my hospital appointment by post? They give me a reminder of when the appointment is by a text. Why don't I just have the appointment by email or by text, which costs nothing? I mean, they ask me every time I go there for my address and my telephone number. I know it's not right for everybody, but if you have got electronic systems which could receive it, why don't we do it? All that postage must be costing a fortune. I think the recruitment, the Lyndon Farnham's drive to stop recruiting, stop filling all positions, I think has started, and I think that's the right way to go. And I think we should continue with that, because we're carrying a lot of staff still from COVID, And that's got to reduce. I don't think a voluntary redundancy thing is a good idea because you lose your best people. So I think gradually through natural wastage, that's the way to do it. I mean, I had another one. I think we need to take a good hard look at departments and I don't really want to name them, but I think there are some nice to haves which we really need to park and perhaps say goodbye to. Hate crimes, hate speech. Is it hate speech we're talking about? Okay, I think we should have our own legislation about this because I think the latest court case, the one we've seen, was a disaster.
Thank you.
Take the first question, how could we cut expenditure? And you rightly, I think, very sensibly asked for specifics. So my first specific would be there are areas where you can certainly reduce consultancy spend, and a start has been made on that within the last 2 years, I'm pleased to see. Locum staff, particularly in health, is also a major source of expenditure. There's always going to be some need for locum staff for short-term cover, but we have had locum staffing in health and in education and in parts of social services that have been running major service provision rather than filling short-term gaps where you can't avoid locum staffing. And that all comes back to good management, good planning, making it an attractive place to work where you can recruit and retain staff, and indeed wider issues like availability of housing also feed into that. Additionally, I would suggest government communications is an area where you could make some smaller reductions in spend. We are a relatively small island with one government. I think some of the bombarding channels and different forms of media with the same message is not always needed, and the level of staffing that sits behind that may also sometimes be a little disproportionate, I think, to what it is creating in terms of value and communication. To take the other side, we would also want to remove the cap on social security contributions on the highest earners, which also creates additional revenue that you can then use for purposes related to social security and so forth. The second question, hate crime, you do identify very precisely the challenge of this. I think I would come down in favour of a law on hate crime. I don't have the expertise to know the detail of how to navigate the problem over free speech, but I think part of it is the distinction between directed at individuals and a general point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Taking Oberon's question first, the headline for me is to spend less and save more and stop taking money out of the Social Security Fund to pay for day-to-day spending. There's an operating balance forecast deficit of £12 million for this year, and I want to see us get back to balancing those books. So the next obvious question is, well, how are you going to do that? Clearly, I'm just one person in a system, but I do believe that a lot of the easier decisions, not easy in the context, but have started to be made. We've seen reductions in things like consultants and not replacing staff. The next part is going to be a lot tougher. And I think we've got to be sensible and informed about how those decisions are made. I don't want to see salami slicing across departments. I want to see informed decisions being made by those who understand the departments that they're working in, to see where we can reduce waste and improve efficiency there. I would just add that health spending and the growth in health spending is what is driving huge growth in the call on public funding. And that is one of those long-term challenges that I think have been put off in the too difficult pile for far too long. And we've got to address it. I've looked back at every single government plan and budget over about 10 years. it's a copy and paste job saying the same thing, we will address it, we will address it. We really do have to address it, otherwise we're just going round in circles and we're not going to balance the books. Our hate crime law, I do support it, and a good law will have a very clear and well-defined way to manage the free speech question. What I would add is that any law does need to have the backing of the services that have to implement it, and they have to be funded and trained to do that as well.
I'm hopeful that the new Assembly members will come together to work as a group, all 49 of them, in order to try and cut waste, because frankly, it's not one person issue, as Lucy's pointed out. At the micro level, moving on from Russell's point, I don't know if you've had the same experience, but I've had friends and family sent out to Lekeneve for hospital appointments. They get there and their files aren't there, so they can't have the appointment. Or they get there and the consultant's on holiday and nobody knew. Or they get there and they were told they should have been in town. And there's a full complement of staff out there doing nothing because the people who are turning up can't be dealt with the way they expected to. I mean, that as a micro example. At the macro level, I go back to what I said about culture. I don't know if any of you have seen Natalie Mayer's post about how she's been trying to get a bus stop out in Rue de Trode for her youth project. She has spent 2 years trying to get a bus stop painted outside of it, and 2 years later, she still hasn't managed it. She put a sequence of all the emails she sent to all the different departments, including the chief ministers, infrastructure, planning, you name it, and nobody can deliver. That's the problem, I believe, in government. It's the lack of execution and delivery. We need our civil servants to be public servants. You effectively are our customers. We need to deliver the services you need in a timely fashion. If we did that, we would be way more efficient. Hence my 10% more for 10% less. On the hate crime, I'll be honest, I'd be very reluctant. It's not something I would like to go down. You've seen in the UK that it's been brought in, the police don't know how to deal with it, there's all sorts of horrible incidents. I want a society that is just kind to each other. I don't really wish to have to legislate in that way. I would have thought there's probably law there already that covers most of these things. Thank you.
In my opening speech, I said that we do not plan long term. And that is one of the biggest problems we have and why we spend so much. It's no secret that JCB, who you all know is a manufacturer of plant and equipment, plan 50 years ahead. And that's a remarkable time scale. They plan 50 years ahead, so they know that in 50 years' time they're going to be producing a particular type of digger powered by a particular energy source. And I believe that from 2030 they're going to be using hydrogen. Now, are we planning anywhere for hydrogen use? No, we're probably not. But it is out there, so we should be. In long-term planning, had the government years ago spent $1 million this year, $1 million next year, and $1 million the year after, Fort Regent wouldn't be requiring 110 or 112 million pounds to renovate it. There is no long-term planning at all, nor is there long-term maintenance. The drains through St Peter's and down St John's have been causing us all enormous problems. Why has that been taking so long? It's because the maintenance hasn't been done correctly and ongoing. And that's, you know, we all maintain our properties, but it seems that the government doesn't. And instead of renovating Cyril Marcon House, what did we do? We raided the pot and we built a brand new edifice, which wasn't really very good long term. So long-term planning is by far the most important. Hate crime worries me terribly. There is a law in Jersey, and I have actually used it as a centeneer and a CO, acting in a manner likely to cause a breach of the peace. I don't know if it can be used for hate crime, but it is there, it's on the books. But certainly hate crime is horrible. Freedom of speech is our right. We've always had freedom of speech over here.
On public spending, so the chief executive of the government of Jersey said he doesn't understand why we are spending over £1 billion in our public services. So I know that he has put together some measures where he thinks there are cost cutting, and I agree with those. And they've been mentioned. So controlling recruitment, cutting reliance on consultants, reducing management layers, and reviewing arm's length bodies. And he says that we shouldn't run Jersey as a big country. So I think that we need to look at, Jersey as a small jurisdiction and how we can apply spending to what we need and not what we would like to have gold-plated. And I think that is a culture change. Somebody mentioned communication. We have to be prepared that if we are to have cuts, we're going to have to realise the consequences of some cuts. If we keep cutting down communications in the government, we're not going to have the transparency that we all need and expect from our government. So it is going to be a balance. On hate crime, we all have the right to live peacefully, and I absolutely agree that we must continue to live in a peaceful island. Not sure on legislation. I'd need to look at that more. I'm not a fan of over-legislation, but more research on that subject.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any more questions from the parishioners at St Mary's? Yes, we have some over here. Annie's coming over. Lady with the green top, or mustard, kind of colour. Thank you.
Diane Wheeler, and I've lived in St Mary's most of my life. Considering the debacle with our ferry connections, what do the candidates intend to do to ensure that local farmers and growers are supported and, excuse the pun, grow the local food market to help us towards more sustainability?
Thank you. And was there another question in that area? The lady just behind. Thank you.
Hello, Nikki Alcock. I live in the parish of St Mary's.
Nice and close with the microphone. Thank you.
Sorry, Nikki. I live in the parish of St Mary's. I'd like to ask, please, what is it about your specific experience that means we should trust you in the Assembly with our finances and our decision making?
Did everyone hear that? Yeah. Thank you for the questions.
Certainly. So the first question was about, in view of the ferry debacle, because I understand it's not really a question about the ferries primarily, it's a question about what we might do to support local food production and lead to a more sustainable food economy effectively. I think this is really important, and it's certainly been a huge change within living memory, the extent to which we live off imported food. And then there's been a further more recent change with the move towards just-in-time logistics, which sees the phenomenon of empty shelves in supermarkets, which we didn't get in the relatively recent past when we were still almost completely living off imported food. These, of course, are partly from forces beyond our local control, because we are bound up in complex, longer global supply chains and are not really able to completely sever ourselves from those, nor would we want to. So the question boils down to how can we, alongside all the benefits of imported produce, ensure that local farmers can sustainably sell to the local market and get a good price for that food, and we all benefit from good quality local produce with very low air miles. And I wonder whether selling through cooperatives might be part of the answer to this, because certainly UK retailers that won't always prioritise taking food from local suppliers may be part of the issue. In terms of why you should trust me with finances, I think I said quite a lot on that in my initial spiel, which is why I haven't left very much time for it. I do have quite a lot of experience and training and background in management of public finances, and I would endeavour to use that skill in the public interest.
Thank you. My manifesto includes a commitment to work with local producers to do exactly that your first question asks. And I'm not going to claim that I have all the answers. What we need to do is work with those who do have the answers and the ideas. One thing that Jersey is full of is people who with very clever ideas. We have a great number of entrepreneurs here, and we see that often in the local food producers. Even you can go down to the local stalls at the end of things, and I'm now seeing flapjacks alongside my Jersey Royals, alongside my asparagus. There are all sorts of good ideas out there, so it's really, for me, it's how government facilitates and enables those people to thrive, whether it's startup grants. I think the planning system is an issue sometimes for some of these individuals. We have seen cases where people want to start small holdings and they've effectively not been able to because of challenges with planning. So we can look there as well. Some of the good ideas, the one that came to me when this question was asked was the one I saw recently with Scoop, working with our local schools to get veg boxes to families as well. And that kind of direct selling of healthy food is a very positive thing, not just for actually getting people to eat, but also teaching our young people about healthy food and local produce as well. On the second question, as a journalist, I developed a very, very strong passion for transparency and openness and accountability. And I believe over the past 4 years, I've really shown that they are the pillars of my work in the States Assembly. And I've continued to ask questions where they've been required, and to be very open and accessible myself, and open to questions and respectful debate. So they would be my key things that I'd bring to the role.
For any poor souls who've read my manifesto, you'll know that I'm very keen on agriculture being part of a tourism project to try and revitalise that. I want agri-tourism to be part of that proposition, and I want our farmers to be encouraged to diversify away from Jersey Royals. Jersey Royals we need, essential, but we also need other food. Sustainable, resilient food production, I think, is essential. As has been mentioned, you can walk into a supermarket after 2 days of bad weather and it's empty. We should be able to do better than that. But we are all in this together because we have to buy it as well. And I have spoken to some Wands farmers who say, well, we can produce it, but not all people are prepared to go and buy it. The old sort of wonky shaped carrot. So supermarkets have been asked if they want beans from the farmers, and they said yes, so long as you can give them to us 12 months of the year. Well, obviously they can't. We need to adopt seasonal eating habits, and I think that's one of the ways that we can help the farmers and help agriculture be more a better part of our economy. In terms of what I can bring, forensic, integrity, money management. My last job working for the law offices, we had to go and get intelligence and evidence in order to build criminal cases. We've used local sources, we've gone internationally, the SFO, FBI, in order to build the case. We have to query answers, we have to look at things inside out. That's good analytical skill set. In terms of integrity, I've bought properties for clients where they haven't even seen the property before I've bought it and handed over the keys to them. That's trust. In terms of money management, I've run an investment management division here, private banking, I've qualified in banking, I can read a set of accounts, I can lend money, I can do all of those things. Thank you.
The food, the local production of food actually is quite a complicated matter. You can't just say to all farmers, right, we want you to produce locally, because it takes a lot of organisation. There were, up until quite a few years ago, there were several very large organisations, Amalgo particularly, Amalgo was the biggest, supplying the local market, and they were doing it very well. It transferred to another grower, and within a few years it fell apart. To supply the local market is a very intricate thing. You have to be providing it constantly, and you have to be providing it in amounts that the local market requires. You can't all suddenly turn up with 50 crates of cauliflower. It wouldn't work. So it would require a lot of organisation. The other thing, that the local people who are already producing vegetables do not want to see sort of amateur gardeners doing it, because it would become almost impossible to regulate. But it is a very interesting one. We could certainly go to more organic growing, doing that. And the other thing we can do, because the Jersey Royal are leaving a lot of fields now that are marginal, and those fields could go over to producing some form of vegetable or another. But it is good. But one of the biggest problems, of course, is workforce. And the other thing is that when we go to the supermarket, because there are local potatoes in our supermarket, and I see they're not being bought, but we're buying Bartlett's and others. So we want cheaper, and it's not going to be easy for us because we haven't got economies of scale. On the finance, as I mentioned before, I am on the board of the Société and also of the National Park, and we are dealing with quite high sums of money. And in the last few years, actually, we brought the Société back into the 21st century, and we are adamant that we do it correctly for our membership.
I think it's really sad that some retailers have said that they are having to add up to 4% on food due to the flat rate card on the ferry service. Food has become really out of reach for a lot of people. I think part of it is needing to get our younger people involved in the production of food to understand how important it is to our bodies and our well-being. And I think, as others have said, it's really difficult to upscale food production. But I so commend the wonderful Honesty boxes and the Scoop cooperative. And I don't know if people went to the last Regen conference, but there was a massive industry in how we can use our soil here to grow crops. So I do think there's a massive interest for boutique and local food. And I think it's a case of educating islanders to be able to choose what is best for their nutrition. So in terms of transparency and trust, as a press officer, I was guided in public service by the Nolan principles. So working for the public service is very much about trust and honesty. In terms of finance, the board that I currently sit on deals with £1.5 million of UK government funding for sport. So I have that responsibility of spending that wisely. That's it.
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it, now that food security and food sustainability is sort of back up higher on the agenda because Trump bombed Iran and the Straits of Hormuz have closed. And it's interesting because when in the last term, when I was so the term before last, when I was a deputy of St Helier in the States, and I was they were rewriting the island plan. It was called the Bridging Island Plan. John Young was doing it, and I tried everything to get, as part of the criteria when they're working out which fields would be rezoned for housing. I tried very, very hard to get, whether the field was good agricultural land, a productive field. Not only just for the soil quality, but sometimes it's to do with the shape, like a triangular field is difficult for farmers now with the machinery. And do you know that wasn't part of the criteria at all? They just wouldn't do it. And I think they absolutely must in future. There is more unused farmland here now than ever before in the island's history, I think, which is telling. And it does mean that you don't have to grow other vegetables instead of Jersey Royals. You could grow them as well as, but market gardening on this scale would need heavy subsidies. The ferry, I know it was a ferry question. That is, all we can do is work harder, negotiating with the ferry company, sorting the deal out, getting a better deal. I have a sense that people in government are very worried about it, and I don't want to worry, but I think that's a good thing in that I think there is a determination to get it better. They're having to work with the company and get it better as much as they can. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I had a really good answer for that one as well.
Right, let's go to this side of the room. There's a gentleman in the back with the blue shirt who'd like to ask a question, so we'll go to him first of all. Thank you.
Good evening, Tim de Grishy from St Mary's. So in March of this year, the Association of Jersey Charities launched a pledge for election candidates to consider supporting. This pledge specifically did not ask for more money, but it did ask for a commitment to strengthen the partnership between government and Jersey charity sector. So my question is, have you signed this pledge? And if you haven't, what was your reason for choosing not to? Thank you.
Thank you. Another question? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susanna Rolls. I'm from St Mary. I've lived here for 8 years. I am particularly interested in education. And with the current fall in demographics, pupil numbers across the island are already falling. As a result, it's likely that some of the smaller parish schools will have to be closed or merged into other schools. They won't be financially viable on their own. As a deputy, you'll be undoubtedly asked by parishioners to keep parish schools open. And this, I think, will affect our schools quite directly and quite soon. How will you balance the request of the parishioners versus what's financially viable for the island as a whole?
Thank you. We're going to start with Lucy first.
Thank you. On the first question, it's an easy one for me. Yes, I signed it, I think, within a day or so of it arriving in my inbox. I agreed to every single commitment on there and also included a summary of it within my manifesto. I think it's particularly important that we are working closer than ever with charities, things like long-term sustainable funding, so charities have a settled position and know what to expect, I think is really important going forward. They do some great work in our community and we're absolutely reliant on our third sector, and anything we can do to strengthen the links between government and the third sector and the community more generally, I support. Susanna's question on education is also quite a clear one for me. I will absolutely resist any closure of any of our parish schools. And I say that as a parish deputy, as a mother with children in those schools. Currently, the numbers in our parish schools are not too bad, but I do appreciate that there are patterns coming down the line that will present some of those questions perhaps sooner rather than later as well. I think we should see it as an opportunity actually to be using some of the resources better. That may mean that some of our teachers have to travel to other schools sometimes to work with others. We have a new partnership model for our primary schools that's coming into play in September, and that's going to be really vitally important to see how that works as well. But yes, I think our schools are at the heart of our communities in these parishes, and welcoming new families into our parishes with affordable housing is how we also help keep those schools with pupils in them and protect them for the future.
In terms of the pledge, I haven't not signed it. I just haven't got around to signing it. Apologies. It will be signed. Yeah, I went to the Association Charities do on 31st of March, I think it was. It was excellent. I learnt a lot. I met a lot of amazing people. my eyes were open to all sorts of things that probably I wasn't previously aware of. I think everyone knows about the jet incident, if that's what we want to call it. And I mean, the states just shot themselves in the foot. I think Jet has come out of it much stronger as a result, and I hope that that sort of enthusiasm for government getting behind charities, because at the end of the day, they are going to provide services and provide much better value probably than the government equivalent. So I think we have to thank them for their support in society. In terms of education, Susanna, you obviously know more about this than I do, but I was standing very close to Le Lons School recently, and when I was talking to some people saying, well, presumably you're from the parish, I got told, no, I'm from St Clement's. No, I'm from St Lawrence. Well, I don't think Le Lons going to be shutting anytime soon because it's that popular. St Peter's, I believe they're going to have a big influx too shortly because they're building, whatever it is, 130 houses in that field in the middle of the village. So the constable was telling me that they're going to have lots of kids, the school can cope, and so they're fine with that. St Mary's, I hope that we get to build properties around here for first-time buyers to bring in young families, and that will then be the lifeblood for the school here. But I'm with Lucy, I'll fight it if I have to. Thank you.
Tim, good question. I signed that as it came in. As I've said in my opening speech, I am a trustee of a charity that doesn't actually operate in the island. We support Romania and Ukraine, but there is a lot of input from the island, and it's very important. But in my opening speech, I also said that we must continue and perhaps increase our support for charities that enhance the care on island, and that is very, very important, because if all of those items were put onto the public purse, then it would go through the roof. Our charities really do keep us going in a very important way, and we must support them. With regard to education, yes, of course, as it was mentioned, the new village development in St Peter's is going to fill up St Peter's School. We have one private school in the parishes as well, of course, which is doing very well. Leyland has always been a good school. I've had children there. I've had children in this school here as well. And I think they will survive, because the villages are ever evolving. Not only, people are retiring, people are moving out and downsizing, people are moving in. So there will be children. And as I've been going around knocking on doors, people are out at work, and there are children within those houses. You can see the toys around. So I think we are lucky in our three parishes particularly that we have a good number of inhabitants and happy inhabitants as well. So I think our schools have a good future.
Thanks for your question, Tim. I haven't signed the pledge, but I will consider it again and read it. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't appreciate the importance of the third sector. It's the fabric of our island, and it fulfills so many roles that government, can't fulfill. So that doesn't mean that I don't have wholehearted support to the third sector, and look forward to seeing what that produces in the future in terms of how it's governed and changes that might be made in that sector. In terms of schools, Susanna, having grown up here and went to St John's Primary School, for me it's just a really important start for young people to get that sort of bespoke education and not be merged into sort of a super school. And having that curriculum and that education from a young age, and also being able to walk to school, I think is so important. And so having that safe passage to school near Leyland, it kind of encompasses that whole experience of what education should be like at a young age. So I would definitely support the parish system in that respect, bringing the community together and delivering a curriculum that will really set our young people off on a really good stead as they seek further education and higher education.
Okay, Susanna, I get where you're coming from. It's a worthwhile to start thinking about this now, but I do support the parish schools and agree with everything Lucy said on that. I thought the Jersey Association of Charities literature that we got was excellent. Where's the gentleman who asked the question? I thought it was excellent, and I can't see that I won't sign it, so I haven't just done it yet. One thing I will do for the charities, every year, a charity wanting a grant has to apply to the government for it. It's a laborious process. It's a huge form. They ask for business plans. You get this form. It's 12 pages long. It's got drop-down menus. It's exhaustive, right? So we have to do that. Each charity has to do that. But on the flip side of it, that material is received by civil servants. Somebody, perhaps 2 or 3 of them, have to read through all of that stuff every single year, when for most charities, a lot of charities, things don't change that much between 24 months or 12 months. They should do that process once every parliamentary term, and then they have 3 years so they can forward plan, know where they are, know what funding they're going to get. And that's also cutting down on waste. And you're right, madam, to ask if we could be trusted with public finances and decision making. One senior minister at the last election wrote in his manifesto, this is 4 years ago, he pledged to get spending under control, reduce taxes, and bring down debt. And none of that happened. That was 4 years ago. And there were other similar claims. But I think that is now so majorly on the agenda. It absolutely is the razor focus of the next assembly has to be on those subjects, controlling spending, etc.
Thank you. For the first question on the Association of Jersey Charities pledge, I will sign it. I have to admit I haven't yet, because I've got a little bit of a backlog of that kind of email to work through. These emails come in thick and fast for your election candidate, and I am also still working during this part of the campaign period. So I will sign it, but haven't yet, is the answer on that. Susanna, thank you for the question on the schools. You asked specifically how would we resolve a kind of dilemma between the financial needs of the island as a whole and the desire and requests locally to keep up the local primary school provision in St Mary's in particular and in the district more generally. I think I probably wouldn't see it as quite so much of a dichotomy as I've just phrased it as, because I think while these schools will go through phases of being full and phases of not being so full, I think in the long term, everything indicates that we need to maintain those schools in these parishes unless we knew we were looking at long-term depopulation, which thank goodness we don't. They may have years where they're not full. They may have years even where they need to combine mixed age group classes, potentially, if they can't maintain single form entry throughout because they haven't got enough children for that. They can also reduce costs by sharing executive head teachers, as is increasingly happening. But I don't think we're anywhere near a situation where it would make any kind of sense, even from a hard-nosed financial point of view, to close them, because once you close them, you've lost them, and re-establishing them is much more difficult and much more costly than keeping them going. And I hope we will see a time when, again, there are more families and more children who will be attending those schools. So I hope it's temporary reduction in numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. All of the candidates have answered those. Any more parishioners from St Mary who'd like to ask a question? Over here we have a gentleman and another one there. Thank you.
Hi, Brian Mansfield from St Mary's. Although none of you currently live in St Mary's, you will soon...
Yes, just hold a little closer. Thank you.
You will soon be representing this parish. You may therefore not appreciate the strength of feeling against the proposed Les Champs Verts solar farm. Jersey's a small island where good quality agricultural land is precious. covering production fields with industrial scale solar panels would permanently damage the rural character of St Mary's, harm an iconic view enjoyed by islanders and tourists alike, and threaten food security. My question to every candidate is simple. Will you commit tonight to oppose industrial scale solar farms on good quality agricultural land in St Mary's and instead support a rooftop first and brownfield solar policy? A yes or no?
Thank you.
Peter Munns from St Mary's. Every parish meeting I go to and every public meeting I go to in the parish, everybody asks a question and talks about the parish rate. I want to know what you as candidates are going to do to bring down the island rate and bring down my parish rate.
Thank you for those questions. We will start with Chris.
I was hoping when I had to start first, somebody would ask, what's your favourite James Bond film? Okay, so the first one is simple. Yes, it's in my manifesto. I try to be balanced in my manifesto by saying if you can combine agriculture with solar panels, then it's got to be something we look at. But having said that, my starting point is until we start putting them on every new build property, every warehouse, as you say, brownfield sites and all the rest of it, then we shouldn't be even touching agricultural land, full stop. I actually don't also understand the concept as to why the JEC want to put it in, because at the end of the day, it's no more green than the nuclear power they're getting anyway. So apart from some resilience, and I agree we do want more resilience locally, it's a bit of an odd one to actually be talking about. In terms of the rates, yes, I have been told St Mary's have the highest rates. Given its locals telling me that, I presume that is the case. You have two ways of dealing with it, I would say. And going back to the solar panel one, you could let the solar panels in. As a parish, you could say, well, we'll have them in because they'll pay commercial rates. And with those commercial rates will then reduce my household rates. That is a...
The question is, how are you going to bring down the island rate, which we also pay? Not about our parish rate. Our parish rate is ours, but it's the island rate, which is a portion of our rates that we pay.
In which case, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that question. I'll go and research it and give you an answer later, but I'm afraid I can't help you. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, assuming it's to do with government expenditure, as soon as we bring down government expenditure, we won't have to defray the costs more widely.
Island rates first. That is a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously, as I said before, we don't plan ahead. And if we could plan ahead, perhaps we could structure the work that the rates pay for in such a way that we can reduce its cost. But that is a really difficult one. The other question, Brian, thank you for that one. I knew it was coming up because it's an obvious one in St Mary. As I said before, the JEC are unimaginative, and I really do feel that. I did go to a seminar where there was the chief executive of the JEC proposing solar panels. There was a gentleman proposing the wind farm and another one proposing tidal power. As I said in my opening speech, the agricultural land must be kept for its intended purpose. And I don't say that for any silly reason. It's extremely important because unless one's got one's head in the sand, we will all know that there is possibly a food shortage on the way. Australia certainly aren't drilling grain in the way they usually do because fertiliser is so expensive. It's the same happening in England. I listen to the farming programme at 5:45 every morning, and production is well down. We are in for trouble, and we are going to need every single verge of agricultural land we've got, possibly. I hope we don't. I don't want to panic anybody, but we must be aware that that is a potential. It's an insurance, isn't it? We must be aware of that. But the solar panels must be on roofs. Go to France, they're on roofs everywhere. We're just lazy over here. I don't know why it hasn't been done. And if it's to do with the flight path, there's plenty of sheds on the north, there's plenty of sheds on the south, so as the planes come in over the flight path, there will be no glare. But there is the opportunity. I don't even like putting them on brown land, because brown land could perhaps be used for housing our young or for other marginal crops. Thank you.
Thank you. So on solar panels, I'm really interested to read about the new technology surrounding solar. And from what I understand, there can be very, very thin layers now attached to all kinds of surfaces, including batteries. So I think it's about looking at the technology that's emerging from this market and being creative to see where we can use that best for our benefit. Again, it's one of these things that we tend to just take a big idea and then try and fit it into our island. We've got to look at the resources we have. And I totally agree. From the get-go, I've always been against using solar on agricultural fields. And I've read quite a lot about that particular solar panel as a crop, if you like. But I do think there are lots of alternatives that we can use as the technology gets better to use the power of solar. So on the parish rates, thankfully I looked at the accounts before I came out, and I understand that it's about 700,000 for St Mary, and 200,000 go to the island rates, and you have over £100,000 of that goes to rubbish collection, and quite a large gardening bill. So I think it would be working with the constables and looking at ways that we can streamline those costs and looking at perhaps more efficient ways to get that waste cost down.
Well, listening to the constables in this room, whenever it was a few days ago, I think it's highly unlikely that you'll get a reduction in the island rates or parish rates. I mean, an easier one to go for, if we want to lower some taxes, is the AMPOs. I think the fuel AMPO has to be slashed. I think the alcohol AMPO too. The trouble with those AMPOs is we've had situations where the AMPO has been hiked up. That's affected RPI. RPI is linked to salaries, the public sector salaries. So we've had occasions when we've got 2.2 million in because of the AMPOs, but we've paid out 5 million because of the pay rise due to the level of RPI. So it's daft. Well, you know where I stand on the solar panels because I went big on it when I started, and I'm very grateful for being informed about it. I am just absolutely shocked that we've got this going on, and I'm not only against it, I will fight it.
Thank you. To take the question on solar panels first, the question asked about specific development and whether we would commit to oppose industrial scale development of solar panels on agricultural land in St Mary's. Yes, I would, and I would go further than that, not just in St Mary's, but across the island as a whole. It was, in fact, a member of my party, Deputy Montfort-Tadier of St Voulards, who brought this proposition to the States, and I would indeed fully support it. I'm aware that party politics is by no means universally popular, so I will also take the opportunity off the back of that just to point out that, in fact, not all the members of my party sitting in the States did support it. We had a split vote on it, and as a party, we do sometimes have split votes on things which are not central to our manifesto and our shared project, where people take a variety of different views. And in fact, this question of the development of solar panels on agricultural land happens to be one of those, but I would be firmly with Montfort-Tadier on this, against and in favour of rooftop first. On the second question, as to the island-wide rate, I'm afraid the only answer I can give to that, I think, is that I don't think it's a matter that properly falls within the remit of a parish deputy. If I'm not mistaken, the island-wide rate is set collectively by the 12 constables. So I'm afraid the answer I can give to that is, were I a deputy, it is not something I would expect to be involved in or have any influence in. Thank you.
Thank you. I was in the States Assembly when the proposition was debated and voted on to do with solar power, and it's a presumption against development on agricultural fields. I voted in favour of that proposition, so to protect them. I also voted in favour of Part B, which was to prioritise solar on buildings as well. I would emphasise it is a presumption against, because when I did attend the briefing ahead of that debate, and some of the petitioners were there and really clearly set out their worries, actually there was some discussion about whether there may be instances where, for example, a smallholder may want to have a couple of solar panels at some stage to be able to run their own equipment on the site and that kind of thing. Who knows on those ones, but definitely against the large scale, as you've pointed out. This will come up when the next island plan is debated, because the work needs to be put in for that plan. So we do all need to be ready for that as well. I would just add, I think Russell briefly mentioned it earlier, but he talked about good quality agricultural land. And as far as I've been learning recently, when I was in a planning committee hearing, there is no real test for what's good agricultural land, and different people will disagree. And you will have people turning up at planning saying, oh, well, it's okay because it's not good agricultural land. And it's been made clear there very recently that actually there needs to be some thinking about how we consider what is good, what isn't good, and how those measures are taken on face value. On the parish rate, and the island-wide rate, it isn't the job of a deputy to be setting those. What a deputy can do is help you as parishioners make representations to your connotab and try to work with them if there are any concerns as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have half an hour left. Is there anyone else from the parish of St Mary who would like to ask a question who hasn't? Oh, lots of hands going up now. Yes, there's a gentleman there in the blue, and then the gentleman here in the jacket. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Terry Reniff. I'm St Mary's parishioner, born and bred, as are many generations in my family. Question is, the current island plan does not support development of small unusable agricultural fields for housing. There's a desperate need for first-time housing in St Mary. If elected, would you support actively a change to the island plan to go away from large-scale developments and go for small fields where possible? Also, just to clarify, I don't think any of the candidates listened to the question on the island-wide rate. The island-wide rate is not set by the parishes, it's set centrally, and it's used to provide the alternative for the parish welfare scheme.
Thank you. The gentleman in the jacket, thank you.
William Lazell, a resident of St Mary. It's a very simple question. Can I ask the candidates' views on the island's carbon neutral roadmap? Is it appropriate and is it achievable?
Thank you.
Oh, no time to think. The small field is a difficult one because a small field is still an agricultural field. However, we were discussing in St Peter's the other day the very same subject, and there may well be a case, but there would have to be the infrastructure there, because there's no point in trying to build anywhere where there's no infrastructure, because you're back to having no drains and no, and probably boreholes and what have you. So, but I have to be honest, I don't like building on agricultural land, full stop, unless it's an agricultural unit. But the thing is that, as I said before, we really do have to preserve agricultural land as far as possible. There might be the odd brown field, as I said before, in the answer to the other question, that could be used. And then if they want gardens, then we can always import good soil. Mr. Lazel, the question of the net zero is very difficult because, as you know, everyone is now extending it. Mr. Trump has completely thrown it in the bin, and in England they're now extending the deadline for the changeover from petrol to electric because of the problems of producing enough electric cars, producing the power units, and everybody wants to keep their own petrol or diesel car going. So it really isn't an easy one. It's desirable though. You know, net zero is a very desirable thing, but it's probably going to be pushed back, sadly, and it's a worry. But I cannot see a commercial reason for it not to be pushed back, if you know what I mean, because everybody's shouting that they want to keep their cars going, and there aren't enough electric cars out there. And I'm not actually convinced that electric is the only way to go, because I'm very, very interested in hydrogen, particularly for big machinery and lorries.
So in terms of your question about small developments and the island plan, I feel that we need to retain the integrity of our countryside and our parishes. And I don't think big developments are particularly suitable to the rural parishes. I would be more in favour of smaller developments that potentially are more expensive but are more well built. But there must be local architects involved in these projects so that, as I said in my opening, that we can have connections to the community to make them fit for purpose for island living, not just cookie cutter, let's tick the box, let's squeeze as many people in as possible. So we really, the island plan, as I said in my opening, is going to be a very important decision to have that balance between housing and retaining our natural environment. On the carbon neutral roadmap, I thought that the Climate Assembly was a really great way to engage people, that democratic process, and a lot of ideas came out from that, and we really saw the passion of especially younger islanders about having a carbon neutral roadmap. But again, I think it's one of those issues where we've looked at, let's take a big issue like climate change and then try and adapt it to our island. I think the more important things for islanders are clean water, clean air, so application to what that means for islanders, again, not just another tick box exercise.
Well, Terry, the smaller fields are the less productive. I mean, my brother keeps growing on the coatees at Latac, really for aesthetic reasons. They don't make any money, the coatees, but he does it to keep the tradition going in it because it looks nice, and it'll cover its cost, the coatee, but it won't make any money. But you're not going to build on it, are you? And I know that's an extreme, Terry, and that's not where you're going, but it depends where it is. Now look, I'm not one of these people, Mr. Lazel, who says, oh, what's the point in Jersey trying to reduce its carbon or reduce its emissions, and we're not going to affect the ozone layer, we're not going to affect the melting ice caps. I'm not one of those people, and but I think Jersey has to do what it can. We have to do our bit and what we can. But that, if the carbon roadmap is permitted, if that's why we're having solar panels all over the most unspoiled countryside, beautiful countryside in the island, then no, clearly the roadmap is taking us in the wrong direction. But I'd like to do my bit. I want to be responsible. I'm fastidious about we've had a recycling scheme in St. Wands now. I'm absolutely fastidious with putting it into the bins, and it's absolutely terrifying the amount of waste that one does produce. Oh, I've got 30 seconds more. I don't need them, I don't think. So that's my answer.
On the first question about prospective future island plan and the position regarding small fields that may be increasingly difficult to farm because, of course, as farming methods have changed over time, small fields present more of a problem than they once did. I think we need to consider this within the context of whatever else is going on within the next island plan. We may be in a rather different situation with the next island plan from the previous island plans, because it does look as if we may have passed peak population pressure and no longer being in a situation where keeping the population down to a manageable limit is the issue, in which case there's likely to be far less need and pressure for large-scale housing rezoning than there has been in the past. And it may well be that some marginal use, small field redevelopment as housing is appropriate. We need to be careful of perverse incentives, because we don't want to get into a position where people want fields rezoned and the pressure is ever upwards on the size or the difficulties of farming, or the level of difficulty farming as to what gets rezoned. But I think certainly that may in some cases be appropriate. On the question as to the zero carbon roadmap, it came from a time when there was great enthusiasm for zero carbon, both here and elsewhere. Whether it was ever fully achievable, I don't know. I think it's a product of the time it was written and may always have erred on the side of considerable ambition. Was that appropriate? It may well have been. Perhaps it's better to aim too high than too low. Is it achievable now? I think increasingly probably not, because of forces outside our control.
Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, on your first question, I'd certainly be open to considering it. I think it's very difficult to give specifics when we're not sure of the sites in particular. Whether there would be a real demand for a large-scale policy where we see it across the island, I'm not so sure, but I would be open to listening to that. Obviously, it would need to make financial sense for people looking to do those developments. What perhaps I would like to see more of, actually, is flexibility for where we're trying to build and maintain strong communities and support networks around families. So you may have a small field or part of a field next to a family farm, and you're trying to keep grandparents together with growing families and grandchildren, and actually that can be really beneficial for all ages, as well as keeping the community strong. So perhaps that's a way of starting to think about those areas as well. On William's question about the carbon neutral roadmap, the Climate Council recently produced their report, which made it very clear that we're absolutely not on target to achieve those things, and they really called for bold vision and commitments and investment as well. Now, my position is I'm not yet ready to give up on it entirely, but I think we've got to be pragmatic, because as Helen has said and others, we're clearly in a different time and place when that was written. There are certain elements of it that I think should be picked up on quicker than others. The circular economy, for example, that report said work hadn't even started on that. And actually that's something that could really benefit us now in a cost of living crisis at a time when we've got so many other challenges. That doesn't have to be an expensive piece of work. It can be a really sensible one. So I'd like to see a pragmatic approach to the parts of that report that are in there. I'm not saying we need to plough forward with all of it, but we do need a clear policy direction, because there's mixed messages at the moment.
I'm not sure where to go to with the first question. I mean, you shouldn't be building without the infrastructure in place. I agree with David there. And I've sat with 3 constables of the 3 parishes, and all of them are complaining about the lack of mains drains in this part of the island. So, I mean, that's a big issue. The island plan, I can't say I like it. It's too long, it's too complicated, it's too contradictory. As far as I can see, it just makes money for lawyers and property advisors. We need to have something that creates a mood music for what we want in this island. My brother lives in 4 different countries over the last 30, 40 years. And he says when he comes to Argentina, he knows where he is. When he goes to Paris, he knows where he is. When he comes to Jersey, unless he's in front of a Jersey farmhouse, he has no clue where he is. We haven't got mood music which says this is what a Jersey property should look like. And I think that's very important as part of the planning process for the next island plan. Basically, I'm not in for big rural developments, desperately keen to protect our coastline. There will have to be some development for families. One particular political party on this island has managed to flood us with flats. We now need properties which are 3 beds and, you know, capable of people moving out of those flat markets into the next stage. In terms of carbon neutral, I believe in the 80-20 rule. You'll probably find 80% of pollution comes from 20% of activity. So why don't we look at boats, planes, power generation? That's our starting point. We were trying to move 1 litre cars to electric. Why? They're not the ones causing the problem. It's the Chelsea tractors. So there wasn't the infrastructure for electric cars around here or the UK, where lots of people will take their car. So I think it's right that we've delayed to move in line with the UK.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from the parishioners at St Mary's? Gentleman there, yes, thank you. There is someone right at the back, and I think it would only be fair to go right to the back of the room. Thank you. Yes, so there first, yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Yes, with respect to the tax, we know we've got 0-10, so most of the finance industry are paying 10% tax. But what's your views about the rest of the economy? Is this 0-10 still applicable, or can you see ways of changing that and getting a more sort of equality within our tax regime?
Thank you. Did we have your name at the start of that?
Sorry, no.
Terry from St Mary, thank you. And right at the back of the room, if you could tell us your name, thank you.
Hi, thanks. I'm David Rasmussen. I'm from St One.
We're just taking from St Mary's at the moment. I'm sorry, I have to prioritise St Mary's parishioners. So we will take one from the lady with her hand up here. Thank you.
Hi, Francesca Rebendane. Yes, of relation. So sorry, Dad. My question is for the younger people in the room and perhaps the absent children for other people here. We've heard a lot about trying to ensure a better future from an affordability standpoint, but what are your thoughts and plans on ensuring younger people find staying on the island an attractive option for their future? Thank you.
Arlene, we'll start with you.
So on the tax question, I'm not a tax expert. However, I would be quite happy and open to listening to various tax theories and policies. I believe it's been in place since Terry Liswer's day. So maybe it is time for a review, but that's all I can say on tax. The question of young people, that interests me a lot more. I'm really passionate about our island, and I think that it really does offer a lot for young people. I was one of those young people that came back to the island after university, and it offers, you know, the great outdoors. We have fantastic space. I think in terms of graduates coming back, we need to incentivize more. So set up a fund for graduates coming back that they can use for their future house purchase, or give them tax breaks on their first couple of years of working here. You know, I think that our heritage and our arts and our culture is really important, and that was mentioned in the Time to Win document. Really emphasised the importance of creating an island where people will thrive and where they want to stay. It's bringing that injection of culture, and we see it. We see it already in the ballet and various arts organisations. It's about having further education on the island to expand minds for young people, and it's about having facilities. The Water Splash is a great place. You know, kids hang out there. I do believe that we need to do something with Fort Regent and look at the funding for it and make it commercially viable. But it's really important that young people have somewhere to go.
What are my general thoughts on the economy and taxation? These are they. I think people are working harder than ever before and feeling poorer. Families are budgeting down to the last pound, and young people are asking whether they'll ever be able to afford to live here and have a home. So something must be done about the taxation and how it is squeezing Middle Jersey. It has to be looked at. Yes, when we did a candidate fair, we had some young people from the schools come to speak to us. It was very interesting, and I think the best thing we can do in answer to the question, what do we do for young people, is listen to them. So I'm talking about now sort of late teenagers. What I got a sense from them is that they liked, they just felt that out west perhaps there's not enough for them to do as otherwhere. So we need to listen to them and we need to try and respond. But the ideas should come from them. And as to young people, you know, without the hope of owning a home, we've got to give them that hope. We've got to increase supply, the right supply, in the right places. I mean, as housing minister, I got a record number of state-owned sites rezoned for housing, including Le Caneve, including the St Saviour's Hospital and one in town. And the government came after me, just gave those to health. So I think they should have at least done St Saviour's Hospital as a village development with some health provision, and but mainly houses. But you know, I lost my seat that time.
Thank you. On the question on 010, its development from its inception reflects the considerable importance of the finance industry to the island. That's not in doubt. We do, I think, need to look at the business corporate tax base generally, and the burden of both taxation and regulation to particularly smaller locally owned businesses. There are some sectors in which we perhaps risk increasing domination by outside corporations buying into the island rather than locally owned businesses. And I think we should be promoting locally owned businesses. 010, of course, looks primarily at kind of corporation tax. We do also have various other duties, and indeed the burden of compliance with GST that can be quite considerable for some smaller businesses. I think that the whole system could do with being looked at with a view to determining where the cliff edges are and where the kinds of types and sizes of organisation, types by sector, sizes both in terms of turnover priority but also potentially numbers of staff, are that make it really disincentive to local business. On the question of young people, I think we need to take a broad view. Housing, support for housing is key, but so is a diversified economy and opportunities for employment in a variety of sectors. And I think also we want to encourage and make it possible for people to return to the island at different points in their lives. Living away is not necessarily a bad thing.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the Time to Win report that was recently published on the future direction of the finance industry, and that report is quite clear that the 010 regime is working extremely well for the finance sector, and they really urge us not to touch it and say that it would make it very unstable going forward. I support our low, broad and simple tax system and would say that if there are any changes to be considered to it, we take them very, very carefully and we look at the evidence first and use an evidence-based approach before we do that to avoid any unintended consequences. Francesca, turning to your question, I sometimes feel like the narrative on this question is slightly the wrong way for me. When we hear people say, and I don't think Francesca did, it's not directed back to you, but just for the record, when we say keeping our young people here, I don't want to see us telling young people they have to stay, because the first thing they'll want to do is leave. For me, it's all about how we attract people back to the island when they've gone away, perhaps as many of us did, to university, travelled the world, got all sorts of experience in exciting jobs and places, and how they bring that back to our island, how they bring those experiences, perhaps their loved ones with them, as many of us did, and the welcome that we give to those people when they bring them back as well. One of my favourite quotes at the moment is from Jacinda Ardern, and she was talking about everybody needs somewhere to work, somewhere to live, someone to love, and something to hope for. So it's about affordable homes, it's about diverse jobs, it's about building strong communities where people can bring up families in this island and having something to hope for. It's projects like Fort Regent, which does have my support going forward. We need to have big projects like that that people can take hope from.
As the Constable of St Mary said last week to his wife, I wish you'd told me you were going to ask that question earlier. Jersey company tax. Right, 0-10. I was never a fan. We were forced to have it by the EU. The politicians at the time did what they did, and they went with 0-10. The 10 is fixed, that's fine. The finance industry we have to protect. I'm obviously a big fan of that. But in terms of the rest of the economy, you can have two shops in King Street selling exactly the same goods. One's owned by a Jersey resident, one's owned by a UK company. One will pay tax here, one will not. That's just not fair. I mean, it's that simple. We have to get our heads around that, and I thought 0-10 was a temporary measure while we worked out a better one. Well, we don't seem to have done the working out of the better one, but I will sit down and try and get that fixed if I get into the next assembly. Yeah, I think that's about it on that one. Okay, so I agree with Helen. I agree with Lucy. We don't want to compel people to stay here. I actually think it's very healthy for our children to leave the island. Francesca's brother has been away for 10 years. He's in Zurich. He may come back. He may not come back. If he comes back of his own volition. And yes, I want the island to be somewhere that is magnetic. Somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, Chris, we need to bring back the buzz. We do. We need to have more joie de vivre. We need to have more enjoyment. We need to have younger people fizzing around. And so I would like to create some tertiary education that's beyond what is available now. Sitting in the audience is hopefully a future education minister. Hello, Victoria. I'd like to work with her on this project. I think it's very important, and I'm afraid, Lucy, I disagree with you about Fort Regent, because I've got different plans for it. I think if... Thank you very much.
I'm not a tax expert at all, but if we mess around with tax and do any harm to our finance industry, we are obviously doing the wrong thing. It's terribly important to keep that here because it is the major part of our income. On the subject of encouraging children to stay, I'm in a very fortunate position in that all of my 4 daughters went to university and they have all come back to the island and they are contributing enormously to it. Whether all of the grandchildren will be able to stay in the island is another matter. But I put a lot of thought into my opening speech, and you will recall that I said we need to be training our young for future enterprise. Education is absolutely everything. And if we want to have other industries other than finance, farming and tourism, we need to be educating our children because AI is going to be taking a lot of their jobs. in the finance industry, we were already seeing AI doing the work of junior people. And it's not only the finance industry, it's other industries, it's also government, incidentally. So AI will reduce the number of young in employment. And of course, what will they do? They might go to the other side of the water, which would be a shame. Also, if you have a child that wants to be a rocket scientist, I'm sorry, but working in St. One isn't going to fit the bill. You must allow children to go and follow their career path if they want to. But education is key, and if we can educate our young into whatever commercial field that they, or other field that they want to work in the island in, then great, that's wonderful. And that would be a way of keeping them, as long, of course, as we can house them as well. And that's a really interesting debate. Thank you.
And that's everyone. And it's 9 o'clock. Well, 1 minute to. Look at that for timing. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving up your evening. Thank you for being here. It's been really great to see such engagement at the various Hustings events. I appreciate that not everyone got an opportunity to ask your question today. So if you'd like to get in touch with your candidates, then you can find their details on the vote.je website. Just a couple of things to mention about the election. Postal votes need to be received by the judicial greffe by 12 noon on Sunday the 7th of June. Please don't forget, if you're going away, if you're going to be on holiday for the election day or you can't get there for any reason, you can vote early at the pre-poll station at St Paul's Centre between the 26th of May and the 1st of June. On Sunday the 7th, polling stations are open from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. We have been asked to remind you to take your photo ID with you. And for any information that you need, you can go to the vote.je website. Just before we close, it is customary for one of the candidates to say a few words at the end, and we drew lots on that, and it's Lucy Stevenson. So over to you, Lucy.
Thank you. Yes, it's fallen to me this evening. So I just want to say a very big thank you to everyone who's made tonight possible, to the community centre and the parish for hosting us, the tech crew at the back over there, and vote.je for organising this evening as well. Annie for taking the microphone around, thank you. And of course, Hannah, our chair, who's chaired brilliantly this evening. Thank you very much. It's no easy task. And then lastly, just to all of you for coming out this evening, thank you very much. Take care.
Wonderful. Good night, everyone. Thank you.